For someone who spends as much time thinking about the Legend of Zelda series as I do, the ideas that didn't make it into the final games are incredibly interesting. It's fascinating to see concepts that, for one reason or another, were dropped at some point during development. Zelda concept art is a window into the minds of the people who work on these games, and a glimpse into an alternate timeline where different ideas were made a reality. Let's start with the most recent 3D Zelda, Tears of the Kingdom, which had masses of concept art published in the recently released Masterworks book. Some of the most interesting to me are those depicting early versions of Link and Zelda's descent into the depths beneath Hyrule Castle during the game's prologue, where they eventually encounter the imprisoned Ganondorf. Masterworks includes concept art showing environments that didn't appear in the final game, but were shown in the E3 2019 reveal, such as the pair leading their pack animal over a stone bridge, stopping to let it drink from a subterranean river, and approaching an ancient doorway, flanked with Zonai statues. Though we didn't see these scenes in the final version, they're not too surprising. However, Masterworks also shows concept artwork for the imprisoning chamber and the sealed Demon King himself, which is where things get wild. Some concepts are quite similar to the final design, such as this, showing Ganondorf bent backwards on a stone platform, surrounded by sacred spikes as he is in the finished game. But others are very different, such as this, which shows Ganondorf surrounded by 6 statues, who point at the imprisoned Demon King. The text beneath the artwork explains that this is the Chamber of the 6 Sages, and the ground is hollowed out by the impact of Raru's seal. I love how the statues look as if they're condemning Ganondorf, much like Twilight Princess's Arbiter's Grounds. Ganondorf's body, and the spirit of Raru who seals him, is quite similar to the final version, as is this artwork, which places the imprisoning chamber on a flat stone floor instead of a platform, or this, which shows Ganondorf surrounded by 6 flames, which also likely represent the sages. Others are far more striking though, such as this, where Zelda looks out at a colossal, shadowy figure, whose mane of red hair identifies him as the Demon King, even if little else does. We can see the glowing green hand of Raru holding his chest, but Ganondorf's body is far larger, more monstrous than a withered skeleton. Masterworks also features this piece, showing Link standing before the Demon Dragon, the form taken by the Demon King at the very end of Tears of the Kingdom, when he consumes his secret stone. Of course, in the final version of the game, the Demon Dragon carries Link into the sky, where the final battle takes place, but this concept art suggests that the battle might have begun in the depths, as the caption suggests, the imprisoning chamber, and perhaps transitioned into the skies through an opening in the cave ceiling. The Demon Dragon's design here is even more imposing than what we saw in the game. It seems bigger, with prominent, muscular arms, and what seems to be Ganondorf's secret stone embedded in his chest. While I love the ending of Tears of the Kingdom, and can't see it having ended anywhere but the sky, I do much prefer this design for Ganondorf's final form, lurking in its subterranean lair, its colossal tail wrapped around a column of stone. There are other versions of the sealed Ganondorf here too, such as the Demon King sealed atop an egg-shaped stone, perhaps a prototype of what would become the Shrines of Light, and him sealed while mounted on the fossilized remains of his horse, and this one, where the sealed Ganondorf has seemingly grown into tendrils of gloom, spreading out from his withered husk. There's something deeply unsettling about this being of immense power trapped here, lost among a network of sealing spikes and his own dark energy, a godlike entity that has survived, perhaps suffered, for thousands of years. It's reminiscent of the Emperor of Mankind from Warhammer 40k, trapped among the whirring machinery of the Golden Throne. The sealing of Ganondorf is one of the most interesting parts of Tears of the Kingdom's lore, and I love seeing these alternate versions. There's actually another in Masterworks which accompanies a different design for Ganondorf, showing his arms locked to his chest, chains around his neck, and sealing scrolls wrapped around his body. Interestingly, the design of Ganondorf himself appears to take a lot of inspiration from his Ocarina of Time and Twilight Princess iterations, especially the latter with the black and gold armor. Speaking of Ganondorf in Twilight Princess, there's a fair amount of design concepts for him too, such as this, showing a much more bird-like incarnation of the Demon King with red hair covering his neck and hands, and interestingly, a design on his chest plate that somewhat resembles the eyes of Majora's Mask. There's also this one, showing Ganondorf with his right arm chained, cloaked in a dark, black substance, probably an early form of Twilight. Interestingly, this parallels Link's right arm in Tears of the Kingdom, wounded by Ganondorf and saved by Rauru, and coupled with the fact that Ganondorf is sealed by the sages long before the events of Twilight Princess, it suggests that some ideas used in Tears of the Kingdom might have their roots in a much earlier Zelda game. Ganondorf's not the only Twilight Princess character to have drastically different early designs though. There's the hero's shade, the apparent reincarnation of the hero of time who passes on his combat techniques to his descendant. At least, that's his identity in the final version, but it seems that this could have been very different. Concept artwork exists of an apparently female hero's shade, as well as a Twilight version, and one more obviously inspired by samurai. Link's companion, and the Twilight Princess, Midna, also had a huge amount of design concepts drawn up too, many of which I find quite difficult to actually describe, which, given that she's the imp form of the princess of another dimension, I suppose works quite well. It is interesting how many of these designs feature prominent masks, perhaps early designs for the fused shadow, or like those worn by the Shadow Beast in the final game. The Shadow Beasts weren't always going to be masked, however. There's artwork of the creatures with their faces bared too, revealing a pointed reptilian head. There's also this, which is just horrifying. There's concept art for other Twilight Princess enemies found in Hyrule Historia, or rather bosses, like this early design for Stalord, the boss of the Arbiter's Grounds. Here we see the beast covered in much more of the dry fur it has in the final version, and with a shadowy figure riding on its neck, like one of the Nazgul riding a fell beast. This figure is likely Zant, as we can see a sword impaled in Stalord's skull, just like how Zant reanimates the creature with his Twilight Scimitar in the final game. There's also this artwork of Link facing a giant spider, Armagoma, the boss of the Temple of Time. Of course, the final game sees the hero fight this boss in an open room, not a tight corridor, but there is evidence that this setup made it out of the sketchbook and into development, as we can see Link fleeing from Armagoma in a similar tunnel in this early trailer. My favourite 2D Zelda game, the Minish Cap, sees Link, through the magic of Eslo, shrink down to a miniature size, allowing him to explore the world of, and interact with, the diminutive Picori. In the final version, the Picori are tiny humanoids, vaguely resembling mice, with regional hairstyles and outfits. But if this concept artwork is anything to go by, they might have looked very different. Here, they're depicted as hairless creatures with puffy lips and beady black eyes, with a single leaf atop their head. While I do like this alien, somewhat Pikmin-esque design, I think that the friendlier appearance they eventually settled on fits the tribe better. Skyward Sword begins on Skyloft, a town built on a rocky isle suspended far above the clouds. It's one of my favourite places in Zelda. It feels like a real place, with colourful characters, secret corners, and one of the best theme songs in the series. So it's fascinating to look back at concept art for Skyloft to see what could have been. Like these. Versions of Skyloft with much more of an emphasis on verticality. We can see many of the ideas that did make it into the final game represented here, like the wooden platforms underneath the islands, but also some ideas that didn't, like this house hanging from the bottom of ropes, or large parasails, likely for descending to the surface. Interestingly, all three of these pieces depict some kind of castle at the top, probably the half of the sealed temple that was carried into the sky, though only one of them features the statue of the goddess. There's more concept artwork of houses that closely resemble the final ones, with the brightly coloured roofs, but featuring massive loft wings perched atop them, and others that show tree houses. There's also this, showing that the bazaar would have been open air, with the day and night sky clearly visible from within. The bazaar's environment is fantastic, but it could have been even more atmospheric. Other interesting Skyward Sword concept art shows alternate designs for Fi, the spirit of the Master Sword. In the final game, she takes on a feminine, somewhat alien form, quite similar to the Queen of Fairies from the Wind Waker. Of course, Fi's true identity as the spirit of the Master Sword is reflected in her design, such as the sword's crystal appearing in her chest and the pattern of its grip mirrored by her legs. Inspiration from the Master Sword is clear in many of these concept designs too, though many of them are pretty strange, like this one, where Fi takes on something of an Iron Maiden form, of course taken from the metallic blade. Notes accompanying the artwork in Hyrule Historia explain that her body would spin, yet her face would remain still. There's also this, inspired by the crescent shape on the Master Sword's guard, this, which turns the bottom of the guard into a dress, and this one, which seems to reflect the guard as a whole. However, there are others where the Master Sword's design language is less clear, such as this hooded cosmic look, this ninja-like form, and these deeply unsettling masked appearances. There are plenty of others too, including concept artwork that shows that, at one point, Fi could have functioned somewhat like the sailcloth, but as with many other designs I've highlighted in this video, I think that the final version is still the best. Something unique, ethereal, yet with subtle hints to her true identity. Of course, it's impossible to talk about Fi without mentioning her evil reflection, Ghirahim, the spirit of Demise's sword. In the final version, Ghirahim's parallels to Fi only become truly recognisable in his final form, when his skin becomes metallic and his hair forms a point like Fi's. Well, a lot of Ghirahim's concept art shows this connection, such as this one, which shows a humanoid form covered in toothed metallics, as well as a more cocoon-like appearance, apparently for his defense and offense metamorphosis, leading to his final form as the sword of the Demon King. There are more humanoid designs too, like this one, which I think perfectly captures Lord Ghirahim's perceived superiority and would have had his mantle move individually like shields. And this, which shows signs of his unpredictable nature and violent mood swings. This design in particular also has accompanying notes in Hyrule Historia, explaining that he suffers from a lack of sleep due to perpetual worship of Demise, hence the bags under his eyes, and that he changes colour depending on his mood. Interestingly, there are multiple designs for Ghirahim that feature 4 arms, such as this samurai look, quite similar to Ganondorf's appearance in Tears of the Kingdom. It seems that he'd hide his extra limbs under his cloak, perhaps until he was beaten and forced to reveal a new form. At least, that's what's implied by this artwork, which paints Ghirahim as an emaciated body made of something like stone. First cloaked, then surrounded by weapons, each locked away in cases, then with his extra arms unveiled, and finally, when angered, his true demonic form, where the skin on his head peels back to reveal hair and horns made of light. There are even more, even stranger designs too, like this, furry one, a design like a harlequin or marionette who would have apparently fought with a yo-yo, and this design inspired by a crow with multiple animalistic transformations. Out of all these proposed designs, I really love those that lean into his pretentious, arrogant nature. Though, like with Fi, I do think that his final design suits the character best. Still, it's fascinating to see these sketches. It gives you a new appreciation for the amount of work that goes into these games, the amount of care and passion that goes into every minute design detail. Thanks for watching this video. If you liked it and would like to see more, let me know. There's absolutely loads of incredible Zelda concept art I could discuss. A huge thank you to Melora Hart and their History of Hyrule albums, where they've compiled massive amounts of scanned Zelda artwork. Check them out with the link in the description. If you like this video, leave a like, and subscribe if you haven't already for more Zelda content. Cheers guys, and I'll see you next time.